Aho, mitakuye ase. Hello, all my relations. How y'all doing? My name is the Lucky Coyote, and today we are going to be playing, or sorry, actually we're not. We are going to be reading some Brothers Grimm. And just a moment, I got to switch around the VTuber model because Suzu likes it reversed.
Yeah, let's change it back once we're done with that.
Oh, I'll have to change back.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it myself.
Well, I'm showing you right now. Where you go to this camera up here in VTube Studio, and you turn on the mirror video, since I'm turning it off.
Ah, he disappeared.
I just went to the other side of the screen. Super quick. And now I go back.
Ah, stop that.
And back to the way I like it.
You ready? You give me in chat and in voice.
Ah, yeah. Susan's in my background. And in my chat. She's everywhere.
Oops.
Oh, 07? Oh. I was like, 09. Oh, 07. All right, got it. All right. Anyway, hope you all are going to have a great weekend. I know I will. There's so much sleep. So much beautiful sleep.
Oh, yeah.
But let's see now. Tomorrow night, Suzu and I are going to a goth event. So that should be fun. Yep. So that should be fun. And then Sunday, her favorite gay uncle is getting baptized.
Yay!
So that's going to be fun. Her only gay uncle.
That we know of.
That we know of. Yeah. Well, your mom only has two brothers.
3.
Oh, yeah, three. That's right.
At least.
Well, two of them have been married to genetic females. And then one has never been married? The gay one has never been married?
He was married once.
Oh, I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah.
You could baptize him. I'm ordained. Nice.
I mean, this is surprising enough.
Yeah, this is a little surprising enough. But I mean, he has gone to your parents' church for a while. He likes it there.
Yeah.
He's retired.
Yeah.
But still likes making food for the church.
Oh, God. So much food.
So much food.
Isn't it? Oh, shit. We still have.
Yeah, we still have food in our refrigerator from your dad's birthday, I think.
No, wasn't that long.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
Hopefully not.
I'll stop distracting you.
Anyway,
I'm a distraction.
you're always a distraction. I mean, yeah, when you have a devout Christian parents and you get baptized every year, it's kind of required to be the baptizer at some point. Oh, I didn't know you got baptized every year. I see as Catholics, Jen and I, Susan and I, we get baptized once into the Catholic Church, and that's it.
Protestant. I was only baptized once.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's different types of Protestantism. Get baptized multiple times, I guess. I haven't heard of one that gets baptized.
Annually.
Yeah, annually.
Weird.
Anyway, let's get to some reading, shall we? I'm Catholic, but my parents feel that I must replenish my soul. Okay. Orthodox or Roman Catholic? That's not the story title. Regular Orthodox. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm Roman Catholic. Should we just do that once? Yeah, I do like the Orthodox Catholic Church, especially because of mostly just because of Latin. But I just find it interesting. But Suzu and I really aren't the best Catholics. Learning something new. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, let's get to the stories. I just got sent to Catholic boarding school all my life. Wow. I went to Catholic school most of my life except for junior high. Hi, Pinky. How you doing? So Shrug had stayed with me. Yep. I don't know. I like the routine. It's nice. What's up? All right. Now we're gonna get to reading. The story is entitled "The Three Army Surgeons" by the Brothers Grimm. Three army surgeons were once on their travels, confident that they had learnt their profession perfectly, and one day they arrived at an inn where they wished to pass the night. The landlord asked them whence they came and whither they were going, and one of them replied that they were traveling about in search of employment for their talents. "In what do your talents consist?" inquired the landlord. The first said he would cut off his hand and in the morning put it on again, without difficulty. The second said he would take out his eyes and in the morning replace them without injury. And the third declared he would take out his own heart and put it back again. "Can you do these things?" said the landlord. "Then indeed you are well taught." But they had a salve which healed whatever it touched, and the bottle which contained it they always carried carefully with them. So the one cut off his hand, another took out his eyes, and the third cut out his heart, as they had said, and gave them on a dish to the landlord, who delivered them to the servant to put them by in a cupboard till morning. Now this servant had a sweetheart on the sly, who was a soldier, and he, coming in, wanted something to eat. As soon as the landlord and the three surgeons had gone to bed, the maid opened the cupboard and fetched her lover something. But in her hurry, she forgot to shut the door again, and sat down to table with the soldier, and they made themselves merry. While she sat thus, apprehending no misfortune, the cat came slipping in, and secreting the cupboard door open, snatched the hand, heart, and eyes of the three surgeons, and ran away with them. As soon as the soldier had finished, the maid went to put the dish away in the cupboard, and then perceived that the plate which her master had given into her care was gone. She was terribly frightened, and exclaimed, "Oh, what will become of me? The hand is gone, the heart is gone, and the eyes too. How shall I manage in the morning?" "Be quiet," said her sweetheart. "I will help you out of your difficulty. On the gallows outside hangs a thief, whose hand I can cut off. Which was it?" "The right," said she, and gave him a sharp knife, with which he went and cut off the right hand of the criminal, and brought it in. Then he caught the cat, and took out her eyes. But what was to be done for the heart? "Did you not kill a pig today, and put the carcass in the cellar?" asked the soldier. "Yes," said the maid. "Then that is just the thing," returned the soldier. "Go and fetch the heart from it." The servant did so, and they placed all three on the plate, and put them in the cupboard. And then her sweetheart, having taken leave, the maid went to bed. As I pause here to read through chat real quick. Doing pretty well. You're feeling a little bit tired. Oh, don't feel out of place on Kick. I usually get 2 or 3 people showing up, at least. What about you? Oh, the brothers light and cheery. Yeah. Not bad. Just starting the night / weekend. Good to hear. The brothers totally not incest. There is not incest in here. There's not. There was the desire in one story, which everyone else was like, you can't do that. $5 says they all lose their body parts to something. Yep, they did. Hope your weekend goes well. I hope your weekend goes well too. 500 says the cat is replaced. Well, they didn't replace the cat per se. I have a feeling this will do a literal got your nose. Or got your heart. Let's see if she's so dead. Oh yes, the thief's hand. Can't help but yoinkity the monies. Oh well, it's only me. Oh, for now, I'm sure other people will show up. With that, I have to mute the alerts though, just in case. That way they don't really interrupt the story. Then it would be a copycat. Mod! Time yourself out! All right, anyway, back to the story. On the morrow, when the 3 army surgeons were up, they bade the servant fetch the plate on which lay the hand, heart, and eyes. She brought it from the cupboard, and the first man spread the hand with his salve, and immediately it joined as if it had grown there. The second took up the cat's eyes and placed them in his head, while the third put the pig's heart where his own came from. The landlord, meanwhile, stood by, wondering at their learning, and saying he would never have believed them had he not seen what they did. Afterwards, they paid their bill and went away. They had not gone far before he, with the pig's heart, began to run about and snuff in every corner after a manner of swine. The others tried to hold him by the coat, but it was of no use. He would run about among the thickest brushwood. The second surgeon, all this while kept rubbing his eyes and could not make out what was amiss. "What have I done?" he said to his comrades. "These are not my eyes. I cannot see. You must lead me, or I shall fall." So they travelled till evening with great trouble to themselves. When they came to another inn, they stepped into the parlour, and there in the corner sat a rich man at a table, counting his money. The surgeon, with the thief's hand, went up to him and peered at him, and as soon as his back was turned, made a grasp at the gold and took a handful. "For shame, comrade!" cried the others. "You must not steal. What are you doing?" "Oh, how can I help myself?" he asked. "My hand is drawn to it, and I must take it whether I will or not." Soon after this, they went to bed, and it was so dark that one could not see his hand before his eyes. All at once the surgeon with the cat's eyes woke up, and disturbing the others, cried out, "See, see how white mice are running about in the room!" The 2 others thereupon raised their heads, but they could see nothing. "It is evident to me now," said the first surgeon, "that we have not got our own. We must go back to the landlord who deceived us." The following morning, they rode back to the first inn, and told the landlord they had not received their own things again, for one had got a thief's hand, another a pig's heart, and a third a cat's eyes. The landlord thereupon went to call the servant maid, but she had escaped out the back door as soon as she saw the surgeons coming, and did not return. The three now threatened to set fire to the house if the landlord did not give them a large sum of money, and the poor man was compelled to give them all he could scrape together, with which they went away. But although they had enough to last them their lifetime, each would rather have had his own hand, heart, or eyes than all the money in the world. Thus ends the tale of the three army surgeons. Yes, fire is always the answer. This next story is entitled Ferdinand the Faithful and Ferdinand the Unfaithful. There we are. There's the title of the story. So let us begin. Ferdinand the Faithful and Ferdinand the Unfaithful. Once upon a time there lived a certain man and his wife, who as long as they were in prosperous circumstances were blessed with no children. But as soon as poverty came upon them, a little boy was born to them. They were now so poor that they could get no one to stand godfather to their child, and the man determined he would go to another town and seek one. On his way he met a poor man, who inquired whither he was going, and he told him he was in search of someone to be a sponsor to his son. "Oh," said the poor man, "you are in distress, and I also. I will be godfather to your child, although I am too poor to give him any gift. Go tell your wife, and let her come to the church with the child." As soon as they got there, the beggar said the name of the boy should be Ferdinand the Faithful, and so he was baptized. Ferdinand the Cannibal, is that an SCP reference? I don't know. I'm not aware of that SCP. When they came away from the church, the beggar said to the mother, "I cannot go with you because I have nothing to give you, nor you to me. But take this key and let your husband take care of it, for your boy is 14 years old. At that age he must go up the hill, and he will there come to a castle to which this key belongs, and whatever is in the castle, it shall be his." When the boy reached the age of 7, he was once playing with other children, and they teased him and said he had received no present from his godfather, as they had all done. Thereupon the boy went to his father and asked him whether what they said was true. "Oh, no," replied the father. "Your godfather left a key for you, which unlocks a castle, which you will find up the hill." The boy went up, but no castle was to be seen or heard of. But by and by, when another 7 years had passed, he went up again, and there saw the castle. As soon as he unlocked it, he found a horse in the stable, and this so pleased him that he mounted it and rode back to his father, saying, "Now I have got a steed, I will travel." So he went off, and on the roadside he found a shepherd, whom he thought at first of taking with him, but he resolved not to do so, and rode on. But as he passed, the man called, "Ferdinand the Faithful, take me with you." So he went back and took him up behind him, After they had ridden a little way, they came to a lake on the shore, of which a fish was lying gasping in agony. "Ah, my good fish," cried Ferdinand, "I must help you back into the water." And, taking it up, he threw it in, and the fish called out as it fell into the water, "Now, since you have assisted me when I was in trouble, I will also help you. Take this reed pipe, and when you are in need, blow thereon, and I will come. And if you chance to fall into the water, I will help you out." After this, Ferdinand rode on, and by he asked his companion whither he would go. "To the nearest place. But what is your name?" "Ferdinand the Faithful." "Indeed," replied the other. "Then your name is like mine, for I am called Ferdinand the Unfaithful." So they rode on to the nearest place and stopped at the first inn. Now it was unfortunate that Ferdinand the Unfaithful came there, for he knew all manner of evil tricks. There was at this inn a maiden, fair-faced and clear-eyed, who took a liking to Ferdinand the Faithful as soon as he came, because he was handsome and cheerful, and she asked him where he was going. When he had told her that he was travelling about, she advised him to stop where he was, for the king needed good servants and courtiers, and he was just the sort of man for him. At first he refused to hear about the matter, and said he must go on. So the maiden went herself to the king, and said she knew of a good servant. The king bade her bring him before him, and as he had a horse, which he said he could not part with on any account, the king made him his courier. As soon, then, as Ferdinand the Unfaithful heard of this, he asked the maiden if she could not assist him also, and, willing to oblige both, she went to the king and got him a place in the royal household also. A morning or two after their arrival, the king awoke, groaning and lamenting that his dear bride was not with him. As soon as Ferdinand the Unfaithful heard this, he went to the king, because all along he had a spite against Ferdinand the Faithful, and advised him to send a messenger after her. "You have a courier," he said. "Why not send him off to fetch her back? And if he does not bring her, let his head pay the forfeit." Thereupon the king summoned Ferdinand the Faithful and ordered him on pain of death to bring back his beloved bride from the place where she was. Ferdinand went into the stable to his favorite horse and began to groan and weep. "Oh, what an unlucky man am I!" The horse thereupon began to speak, and asked him what was the matter. Ferdinand was astonished to hear the horse speak, and exclaimed, "What, Schummel, can you talk? Know then that I have to fetch the king's bride, and know not where to go." Schummel replied, "Go you to the king, and tell him that, if he will give you what you ask, you will fetch his bride, but it must be a ship full of meat, and another full of bread. For there are giants across the lake where you must go, who would eat you if you brought no meat, and there are birds who also would peck out your eyes if you took no bread." Oh, BRB, BRB. Chicken strips. Fair enough. Ferdinand went and told the king, who caused all the butchers to kill and dress meat, and all the bakers to make loaves, with which 2 ships were filled. As soon as these were ready, Schummel said to Ferdinand, "Now take me with you in the ship, and set sail, and when we come to the giants, say to them." Peace be with you, giants dear, for I have brought you, never fear, a good supply of freshly cheer. And when the birds come, say, Peace be with you, ravens dear, for I have brought you, never fear, a good supply of baker's cheer. With these words they will be satisfied and leave you, and when you come to the castle, the giants will help you, and 2 of them will go with you to where the princess sleeps, whom the king wants. You must not awaken her, but the giants must take her up in her bed and carry her to the ship. All this happened precisely as the horse said, and Ferdinand the Faithful gave the giants and the birds what he had brought with him. And thereupon the giants were satisfied, and brought the princess to the king. As soon as she came, she said she must have her letters, which were left behind at the castle, and the king ordered Ferdinand the Faithful to fetch them on pain of death. Ferdinand again went into the stable and told his horse what duty he had to perform, and Schummel advised him to load the ships as before and sail to the castle. This he did, and the giants and birds were satisfied a second time. And when they arrived at the castle, Schummel told Ferdinand where the sleeping chamber of the princess was, and he went up and fetched the packet of letters. On their way back, Ferdinand unluckily dropped the letters into the water, and Schummel said, Alas, alas, I cannot help you now. Then Ferdinand bethought himself of his reed pipe, and began to blow it. And presently the fish, which he had formerly saved, made its appearance, carrying in its mouth the letters which it delivered to its preserver. After this, they brought home the letters safely to the palace, where the wedding was about to be held. Now the queen did not love the king much, because he had a small nose, but she took great fancy to Ferdinand the Faithful. And once, when all the court was assembled, the queen said she knew some curious arts. She could cut off a person's head and put it on again, without doing him any harm. When Ferdinand the Unfaithful heard this, he suggested that she should make the experiment on Ferdinand the Faithful. And so, after a while, she did, and after cutting off his head, put it on again, and it healed up, so that only a red mark was visible round the neck. "Where did you learn to do that, my child?" asked the king. "Oh, I understand it well enough," she replied. "Shall I experiment on you?" The king consented, but when she had cut off his head, she would not put it on again, and, after a lapse of some time, she married Ferdinand the Faithful. Now he rode again upon his horse Schummel, and one day it told him to ride thrice up the hill, and, as soon as he had done so, the horse returned to its original form, and became a handsome prince. Thus ends the story of Ferdinand the Faithful and Ferdinand the Unfaithful. Odd ending. Talking animals know a lot that they probably shouldn't. So always listen to a talking animal, but take what they say with a grain of salt, because they could be trying to trick you. Could be. Normally, talking animals are very helpful in these stories, I guess. I guess not all of them are tricksters. This next story is entitled "The Shoes Which Were Danced to Pieces." So let us change that. This story is going to have a lot of soul. Maud! I can hear your snickering in the other room. Look, everyone, it's Suzu, the punniest person. I'm sorry, the funniest wolfu, or the punniest wolfu. Anyway, let us begin. I married you for a reason. I don't think the puns were part of that reason. The Shoes Which Were Danced to Pieces by the Brothers Grimm. There was once upon a time a king who had 12 daughters, every one of whom was prettier than her sisters. They slept together in one room, where their beds all stood in a row, and in the evening, as soon as they were gone to sleep, the king shut the door and bolted it. One morning, when he opened the door as usual, he perceived that their shoes were danced to pieces, and nobody could tell how it happened. The king, therefore, caused it to be proclaimed that whoever could discover where they had danced in the night should receive one of them to wife, and become king at his death. But whoever should attempt to do it, and after 3 nights and days fail, must lose his life. In a short time a prince came and offered himself to undertake the task. He was well received, and at night led to a room which adjoined the bedchamber of the princesses. There he was to watch whither they went to dance, and, in order that they might not slip out secretly to another place, their room door was left open for him to see. But the prince soon felt a mist steal over his eyes, and he went to sleep. And when he awoke in the morning, he found the princesses had all been dancing as usual, for their shoes stood there with holes in the soles. The second and third night it happened just the same. And on the morrow the prince lost his head without mercy. Afterwards came many more and attempted the task, but they all lost their lives. One day it chanced that a poor soldier, who had a wound which prevented him from serving, came upon the road which led to the city where the king dwelt. There he met an old woman, who asked him whither he was going. "I do not know myself altogether," he replied, "but I had an idea of going to the place where the princesses dance their shoes to pieces, to find out the mystery, and so become king." "That is not difficult," said the old woman, "if you do not drink the wine which will be brought to you in the evening, but feign to be asleep." With these words she gave him a cloak, and told him that if he put it on his shoulders, he would become invisible, and be able to follow the princesses. As soon as the soldier had received this good advice, he plucked up courage and brought himself before the king, as a suitor. He was well received, as the others had been, and was dressed in princely clothes. When evening came, he was led to his sleeping room, and, as he was about to go to bed, the eldest princess came and brought him a cup of wine. But he had fastened a bag under his throat, into which he poured the wine, and drank none. Then he laid himself down, and in a short time began to snore, as if he were in a deep sleep, while the 12 sisters laughed to one another, saying, "He might have spared himself the trouble." In a few minutes they arose, opened cupboards, closets, and drawers, and pulled out a variety of beautiful clothes. As soon as they were dressed, they looked at themselves in the glass, and presently began to dance. But the youngest sister said, "I know not how you are enjoying yourselves, but my heart sickens, as if some misfortune were about to fall upon us." "What a goose you are!" cried the eldest sister. "You are always fearing something. Have you forgotten how many kings' sons have already lost their lives? Why, if I had not given this soldier his sleeping draught, the simpleton could not even then have kept his eyes open." As they were now quite ready, they first looked at the soldier and satisfied themselves all was right, for he kept his eyes shut and did not move a bit. And then the eldest sister knocked on her bed and sank down in the ground, and the 12 princesses followed it through the opening, the eldest one going first. The soldier, having observed everything all the while, put on his invisible cloak and descended with the youngest sister. About the middle of the steps, down he trod on her cloak, and she exclaimed, much frightened, "Who is that holds my cloak?" "Don't be so silly," said the eldest sister. "You caught it on some nail or other, that is all." So they went completely down, and at the bottom was a wonderful avenue of trees, whose leaves were all silver and shone and glittered. The soldier thought to himself he would take one branch for a token, and broke it off, when a tremendous crack sounded as from the tree. "It is not all right," cried the youngest. "Did you not hear the crack?" "That is a shot of welcome," said the eldest, "because we have been so lucky." Then they passed into another avenue, where the leaves were of gold, and then into a further one where they shone like diamonds. From both he broke off a twig, and each time the youngest princess shrieked with terror, while the eldest ones declared they were merely guns of welcome. So they went further and came to a lake, on which were 12 little boats. And in each boat a handsome prince, who each took one sister, and the old soldier sat down in the boat where the youngest one was. "I know not how it is," said the prince, "but the boat seems much heavier than usual, and I am obliged to use all my strength to row it along." "Perhaps that proceeds from the warmth of the weather," said the princess. "I am myself much more heated than usual." On the other side of this water stood a noble castle, which was well lighted, and one could hear the music of horns and fiddles within. Towards this they rowed, went in, and each prince danced with his own partner, while the soldier danced among them, all invisible. And whenever a glass of wine was handed to one or the other, he drank it out, so that it was empty when held to their lips. And the youngest sister again felt very uneasy, but her sister bade her hold her tongue. Here they danced till 3 in the morning, at which hour, because their shoes were in holes, they were compelled to desist. The princes rowed them back again over the water, but this time the soldier sat down with the eldest princess. On the shore they took leave of the princes, and promised to return the following morning. When they came back to the steps, the soldier ran up first, and lay down again in his bed, and when the 12 sisters came up, weary and sleepy, he snored so loudly that they all listened and cried, "How much safer could we be?" Then they took off their fine clothes and locked them up, and putting their dancing shoes under the bed, they lay down to sleep. The next morning the soldier said nothing, wishing to see more of this wonderful affair. And so the second and third nights passed like the first. The princesses danced each time till their shoes were in holes, and the soldier, for an additional token of his story, brought away a cup with him from the ballroom. When the time arrived for him to answer, he first concealed the twigs and cup about him, and then went before the king, while the 12 princesses stood behind the door and listened to all that was said. "Where have my daughters danced during the night?" asked the king. "With 12 princes in a subterranean castle," he replied, and, relating everything as it had occurred, he produced his witnesses in the 3 twigs and the cup. The king then summoned his daughters and asked them if the soldier had spoken the truth. They were obliged to confess he had, and the king asked him which he would have for a wife. "I am no longer young," he replied, "and so it had better be the eldest." Thereupon the wedding was celebrated the self-same day, and the kingdom appointed to him at the old king's death. But the princes were again bewitched in as many days as they had danced nights with the 12 princesses. Thus ends the shoes which were danced to pieces. Wine, yes. The princesses whine a lot. There is much whining. This next story is entitled The 3 Brothers. So let me change the title real quick. Why are you stopping, mouse? What is happening? I'm trying to do a thing. Why are you being slow? It'll go for a while and then it'll just stop. It's odd. Okay. Is that it? What was it again? Oh, yeah. There we go. The 3 Brothers. It did that to me last night too. Odd. I may have to look into it. It might just be like the cord is loose or something. Well, it does have one of the... It did have the little sensor thing on it, like coming off. So I just peeled it the rest of the way off. Like the little plastic piece or whatever, the little protector. That may have done it. Anyway, let's get to the story. The 3 Brothers by the Brothers Grimm. There was once a man whose family consisted of 3 sons, and his property only of the house in which he dwelt. Now, each of them wished to have the house at the death of the old man, but they were all so dear to him that he knew not what to do for fear of offending the one or the other. He would have sold the house and shared the money, but it had been so long in his family, he did not like to do that. All at once he thought of a plan, and said to his sons, "Go into the world, and each of you learn a trade, and he who makes the best masterpiece shall have my house." With this plan the sons were contented, and the eldest became a blacksmith, the second a barber, and the third a fencing master. They appointed a time when they should all return, and went away. And it so chanced that each happened with a clever master, with whom he could learn his trade in the best manner. The smith had to shoe the king's horses, and thought he must undoubtedly receive the house. The barber shaved many distinguished lords, and made sure of getting the house on that account. The fencing master got many a blow, but he bit his lip and showed no concern, for he feared if he flinched at any stroke, the house would never become his. By and by, the time came round when they returned home to their father. But they none of them knew how they should find occasion to show their proficiency, and so they all consulted together. While they sat in consultation, a hare came running across the field where they were. "Ah, here he comes as if he were called," cried the barber, and, taking his soap and basin, he made a lather, and as soon as the hare came up, he seized him and shaved off his mustachios as he ran along, without cutting him in the least, or taking off any unnecessary hairs. "That pleases me very well," said the father. "And if the others do not do better, the house is yours." In a very short time, a carriage with a traveler in it came rolling by at full speed. "Now you shall see, father, what I can do," cried the smith, and, seizing the horse's feet as he galloped along, he pulled off his shoes and shod him again without stopping him. "You are a clever fellow," cried the father. "You have done your work quite as well as your brother, and I shall not know to whom to give the house." "Let me show you something," said the third brother, and, as it just then luckily began to rain, he drew his sword and waved it so quickly above his head that not a drop fell upon him. And when the rain came faster, and at length so fast that it was as if one were emptying pails out of the heavens, he swung the sword quicker and quicker in circles above his head, so that he kept himself as dry as if he had been under a roof. As soon as the father saw this, he was astonished, and said to his son, "You have performed the best masterpiece. The house is yours." The two other brothers were contented with his decision, and, because they all loved one another, they all three remained in the house, driving their special trades. And as they were so clever, and were so advanced in their arts, they earned much money. Thus they lived happily together to their old age. And when one fell sick and died, his brothers grieved so for his loss that they fell sick also and died. Then, because they all three had been so clever in their several trades, and had loved one another so much, they were laid together in the same grave. Thus ends the tale of the three brothers. Didn't have any kids, didn't have any wife, nothing. None of them had wives or children. Nothing. No families. It was like, no, we're good as bachelors. Living in this house. This swords or fence installation. I don't think there was a fencing profession in what would that be? Late Renaissance? Because I mean, this was written in the 1800s. So I don't know what that would be. Imperial Germany? Maybe? I don't think there was a person who was specifically specified or specialized in fencing, like installing fences or making fences. They just called a regular carpenter for that, I guess. Well, I mean, there might have been, doing fancy fences, but that was like a metalsmith. I think they would have had fences back then. Yeah, they would have had fences back then, but I don't think they had like a dedicated profession of like a specific fencer or fancy. Ah, well. Sword fighting, yes. Sword fighting master, yes. They would have had those for a long time. Trust me, I have the opposite issue at work. Meaning, well, I don't know what you mean with that. This next story is entitled The Evil Spirit and His Grandmother. So let us begin. Talking to fencing people and hoping for swords. I've been hearing a commercial on the radio recently where it's like, hey, you should totally take up fencing. It's like the American Fencing Association or something like that. Something like that. Where it's like, oh yeah, you can go to our website and check out, fencing schools near you. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm good. No. Anyway, let's get to the story. The Evil Spirit and His Grandmother by the brothers Grimm. There was once upon a time a mighty war, and the king of a certain country had many soldiers engaged in it. But he gave them such a very small pay that they had scarce enough to live upon. At length, 3 of the soldiers agreed to run away, and one of them asked the others what they should do, for, supposing they were caught again, they would be hung upon the gallows. "Do you see yon great cornfield?" said the other. "There we will conceal ourselves, and nobody will find us, for the army will not dare to come there, and tomorrow they will march on." So they crept into the corn, but the army did not move, but remained encamped in the same place. The 3 soldiers were obliged, therefore, to pass 2 days and 2 nights in the corn, and they became so hungry that they thought they must die. But it was certain death if they returned to the army. They said to one another, "What avails our deserting? We shall now certainly perish miserably from hunger." While they were talking, a great fiery dragon came flying over their heads, and, alighting near the spot where they were, asked why they had concealed themselves. "We are soldiers," they replied, "and have deserted because our pay was so small. And now we shall die from hunger if we stay here, or be hung on the gallows if we return." "If you will serve me 7 years," said the dragon, "I will carry you through the midst of the army, so that no one shall observe you." "We have no choice, and so must consent to your proposal," replied the soldiers. The dragon thereupon caught them up by his claws and carried them through the air, over the heads of their comrades, and presently set them down. Now, this dragon was the evil spirit, and he gave the soldiers a whip each, and then said, "If you crack this well, as much money as you require will instantly appear before you, and you can then live like lords. Keep your horses and carriages, but at the end of 7 years you will be mine." With these words, he handed them a book in which they had to write their names, while the evil spirit told them he would give them one chance when the time was up of escaping his power by answering a riddle which he would propose. Then the dragon flew away from them, and the 3 soldiers each cracked their whips for as much money as they required, with which they bought fine clothes and traveled about like gentlemen. Wherever they went, they lived in the greatest splendor, driving and riding about, and eating and drinking to their hearts' content. But no bad action could be laid to their charge. The time passed quickly by, and, as the end of the 7 years approached, 2 of the 3 soldiers became very unhappy and dispirited, but the third treated the matter very lightly, saying, "Fear nothing, my brothers. I have got a plan in my head, and I will solve the riddle." Soon afterwards they went into the fields, where they sat down, and 2 of them made very wry faces. Presently an old woman came by, and asked them why they were so sorrowful. "Alas," said they, "alas, what does it signify? You cannot help us."
"Who knows that?" she replied. "Confide your griefs to me."
So they told they had become the servants of the evil one nearly 7 years back, and thereby they came into possession of money as fast as they liked. But they had signed the deed, and if they could not guess a riddle which he would propose to them, they were lost.
"If you wish to be helped," replied the old woman, "one of you must go into the forest, and there he will find a rock overthrown, and make into the form of a hut. Into this he must enter, and there he will meet with help."
The 2 low-spirited soldiers thought this would not help them, but the merry one got up, and, going into the forest, came soon to the rocky cave. In this place sat a very old woman, who was grandmother to the evil spirit, and she asked the soldier when he entered whence he came, and what his business was. He told her everything that had happened, and, because his manners pleased her, she took compassion on him, and said she could assist him. Thereupon she raised a large stone, under which was the cellar, wherein she bade the soldier conceal himself, and he would hear all that transpired.
"Only sit still and keep very quiet," said she, "and then, when the dragon returns, I will ask him about the puzzle, and you must mind what answers he makes."
About 12 o'clock flew in, and desired his dinner. His grandmother, therefore, covered the table with food and drink, and they ate and drank together till they were satisfied. Then she asked him what success he had met with that day, and how many souls he had secured. "Things did not go well today," replied the dragon, "but yet I have caught 3 soldiers safe enough."
"Ah, 3 soldiers," said the old woman, "and I suppose you have set them to something to do, that they may not escape you."
"They are mine! They are mine!" cried the evil one gleefully, "for I have set them a riddle which they will never guess."
"What is this riddle?" asked his grandmother.
"I will tell you," replied her grandson. "In the great North Sea lies a dead sea-cat, that shall be their roast meat. The rib of a whale shall be their silver spoon,
and an old hollow horse's hoof shall be their wine-glass." As soon as the dragon had said this, he went to bed, and the old woman raised the stone and let out the soldier. "Have you attended perfectly to all that was said?" inquired the old woman.
"Yes," he replied. "I know well enough how to help myself now."
Then he had to slip secretly out of the window and, by another road, regain his companions with all the haste he could. He told them how craftily the old grandmother had overreached the dragon, and had laid bare to him the solution to the riddle. When he had finished his story, the two other soldiers recovered their spirits, and, all taking their whips, flogging for themselves so much money that it lay in heaps all around them. Not long after this, the 7 years came to an end, and the evil spirit made his appearance with the book, and, pointing to their signatures, said to the soldiers, "Now I will take you into my dominions, and there you shall have a meal. But if you can tell me what meat you shall have, you shall be at liberty to go where you like and keep your whips."
"In the great North Sea lies a dead sea cat, and that shall be the roast meat," replied the first soldier. The evil spirit was very much put out with this ready answer, hemmed and hawed, and asked the second man what should be the spoon. "The rib of a whale shall be the silver spoon," replied the second soldier. The evil spirit now drew a longer face than before, began to grumble and swear, and asked the third soldier, "Do you know what your wine-glass will be?" "An old horse's hoof," he replied. At this reply, the evil spirit flew away with a loud outcry, for he had no longer any power over the 3 soldiers, who, taking up their whips, procured all the money they wanted, and thereon lived happily and contentedly to a good old age. Thus ends the tale of the evil spirit and his grandmother. There's a lot of stories too of tricking the devil or outwitting the devil. Seems to be a sometimes prevailing theme. This next tale is entitled The Idle Spinner. So let's get to it. The Idle Spinner by the brothers Grimm. In a certain village lived a man and his wife, who was such a very idle woman that she would do no work at all scarcely. For what her husband gave her to spin she did very slowly, and then would not take the trouble to wind it, so that it lay on the ground, ravelled and shackled. Whenever her husband scolded her, she was always beforehand with an excuse, and used to say, "Why, how can I wind without a reel? You must go and fetch me one from the wood first." "Well, if that is all," said her husband one day, "if that is all, I will go and find you one." As soon as he had said this, the woman began to be afraid that if he found a piece of wood,
he would make a reel from it, and she would have to wind up what was raveled and begin afresh. She therefore considered a while what she should do, and then the lucky thought came to run into the forest secretly. That's an odd sentence. Sorry. She therefore considered a while what she should do, and then the lucky thought came to run into the forest secretly after her husband. She found him in the act of cutting a branch off for the purpose of trimming it, and so, slipping in among the brushwood where he could not see her, she began to sing. "He that cuts a reel shall die, and he that winds shall perish." The man listened, laid down his axe, and wondered what the voice meant. At last he said, "Ah, well, what should it be? I was nothing but some fancy in my head, about which I need not fear." So saying, he seized his axe and began again, but the voice sang as before. "He that cuts a reel shall die, and he that winds shall perish." The man stopped again, and began to feel very uncomfortable and frightened. But he soon took courage and began to chop again. At the same time, the voice cried again. Hello, back with strips. What did I miss? A couple of short stories. Nothing too interesting. Or nothing, terribly amazing. This time he was too frightened to do anything more, and hastily leaving the tree, he set out homewards. Meanwhile, his wife, by a bypath, and by means of great exertion, reached home before him, and when he arrived, she looked as innocent as if nothing had happened, and inquired of her husband if he had brought a good reel. "No, no," he said, "I can see very well that it is of no use. Winding won't do." And then, after telling her all that had happened, he ceased to scold her for her idleness. But only for a while, for soon the disorder in his house began to vex him again. "Wife, wife," he said, "it is surely a shame that you leave your thread in that ravel." "Well, do you know what to do?" said she. "Since we can get no reel, do you lie down on the floor, and I will stand above you, and then you must throw the thread up to me, and I will send it back to you. And so we will make a skein." "Ah, yes, that will do," said the man, and they perused this plan, and as soon as the skein was ready, he talked of its being boiled. This aggravated the woman again, and she bethought herself of some new plot, while she consented to do as he proposed. Early in the morning, accordingly, she got up, made a fire, and, putting on the kettle, put a lump of tow into it instead of the skein of thread, and left it to soak. This done, she went to her husband, who was still in bed, and said to him, "I have to go out now, but do you get up at once and see after the thread which is in the kettle over the fire, and mind you are very attentive to it, for if by chance the cock should crow before you look at it, the thread will all turn to tow." Tow? I don't know exactly how to... I guess that's how you pronounce it. The husband thereupon got up at once, and stopped for no further directions, but, running as quick as he could into the kitchen, he looked into the kettle, and grew pale with affright. The thread was already changed into tow. After this, the poor man was as still as a mouse, for he believed that it was his fault that the thread was spoiled.
and for the future he dared say nothing about the thread and spinning. But I must confess that after all the woman was indeed an idle, slovenly wife. Thus ends the tale of the idle spinner. Suzu's mother would be appalled. Appalled, I say! She is very much into spinning and doing yarn work. This next tale is entitled The Donkey Cabbages. My cabbages! Yeah, this mouse definitely has something wrong with it, where it just randomly stop. It's very odd. Anyway, let us begin. The Donkey Cabbages by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a young sportsman who was out in search of game. He had an honest and merry heart, and whistled as he went along. And by he met an ugly old woman, who spoke to him and said, "Good day, my good huntsman. You are merry and well fed, but I am suffering from hunger and thirst. Give me an alms, I pray you." The sportsman pitied the poor woman, and, putting his hand in his pocket, gave her what he could afford. As soon as he had done so, he was walking on, but the woman stopped him, and said to him, "Listen to what I have to say. For your good-heartedness, I will make you a present. Go now straight along this road, and soon you will come to a tree, whereon sit 9 birds, quarreling over a cloak, which one will have. Aim at them with your gun, and shoot in the midst of them. Then not only the mantle will drop, but also one of the birds will fall down dead. Take the cloak with you. It is a wishing cloak, which if you put on your shoulders, you will have only to wish yourself where you would be, and at the moment you will be there. Take out also the heart of the dead bird, and swallow it whole, and then every morning when you arise, you will find a gold piece under your pillow." The huntsman thanked the wise woman, and thought to himself, "These indeed are good gifts, if they turn out as promised." He had not gone 100 yards from the spot before he heard a great chirping and rustling among the trees, and, looking up, he saw on one of them a bevy of birds, who were plucking at a cloth with their bills and claws, tearing it among themselves, for each one wanted it for himself. "Now, this is wonderful!" cried the sportsman. "It has come to pass just as the old woman promised." And, lifting his gun to his shoulder, he shot at the birds, who all flew away but one, which fell dead with the cloak, over which they had been disputing. Then the huntsman did as the old wife had said. He cut out the heart of the bird and swallowed it whole, but the cloak he took home with him. The next morning when he awoke, he remembered the promise, and, lifting his pillow up, he found under it a bright shining piece of gold. The morrow morning it was the same, and so it went on. Every day he got up he found another piece. Soon he collected a heap of gold, and thought, "What use is all this gold to me if I stay at home? I will go away and look about the world." So he took leave of his parents, and,
hanging around him his belt and pouch, he set out on his travels. One day it chanced that he passed through a thick forest, and as he came to the end of it, he saw in the distance before him a magnificent castle. At one window of it stood an old woman, with a wonderfully beautiful maiden by her side, looking out. But this old lady was a witch, and said to her daughter, "Here comes one out of the forest who has a wonderful treasure in his body, which we must have, for, my beloved daughter, it is more fit for us than for him. It is a bird's heart, and whoever possesses it finds a gold piece every morning under his pillow." She further told her daughter how it was to be procured, and what she was to do, and threatened her, if she did not obey, to visit her with some misfortune. As soon as the huntsman approached, he perceived the maiden, and said to himself, "I am weary enough with travelling about, so now I will rest, and turn into this fine castle, for I have money enough." But the real reason was the beautiful face which he saw at the windows. He entered the house, and was hospitably received, and courteously entertained. And soon it came to pass that he was so in love with the daughter of the witch that he could think of nothing else, and followed her with his eyes everywhere, willing to do all she wished. Then the old woman said, "Now we must get the bird's heart, for he will not miss it when it is gone." She concocted, therefore, a drink, and when it was ready, she put it into a cup, and gave it to her daughter, who had to hand it to the huntsman, and say, "Now, dearest, drink to me." He took the cup, and as soon as he had swallowed the draught, the heart fell out of his mouth. The maiden carried it secretly away, and then swallowed it, for the old woman wanted it herself. Ever after, the huntsman no longer found gold pieces under his pillow, for they lay now beneath the maiden's head, and the old witch fetched them every morning. But he never troubled himself about the matter, and was content so long as he passed his time with the maiden. Soon the old witch began to say to her daughter, "We have the bird's heart, but not the cloak, which we ought also to have." This the maiden would fain have left him, since he had lost his riches. But the old mother flew into a passion, and said, "This cloak is a wonderful thing, and such as it is seldom found in the world, and I must and will have it." With these words she beat her daughter, and vowed, if she did not obey her, to do her some injury. The daughter, therefore, at the bidding of her mother, placed herself at the window one day, and looked sadly at the far distance. "Why stand you so sorrowfully there?" asked the huntsman. "Ah, my treasure," she replied, "over there lies the granite mountain, where grow precious stones, and when I think about them, I become quite sad, for I long so for them. But who can get them? Only the birds which fly to and fro. No man ever can."
"Is that all you have to complain of?" said the huntsman. "Then I will soon remove that grief from your heart."
Thereupon he put her under his cloak, and wished himself over the granite mountain, and in a moment they were set down in the place. There glittered the precious stones on all sides, so that it was a pleasure to see them, and they collected the most costly ones together. But now the witch had caused her by her arts a great drowsiness to come over the poor huntsman, and he said to the maiden, "We will sit and rest a while, for I am so tired I cannot keep upon my feet." So they sat down, and he laid his head in her lap and went to sleep. And while he slept, the maiden took the cloak from his shoulder and threw it over her own back. And then, gathering up the precious stones, she wished herself home again. By and by the huntsman awoke, and found that his mistress had deceived him, and left him alone on the wild mountain. "Alas!" he cried, "what faithlessness there is in the world!" And he remained lost in care and anxiety, ignorant what to do. The mountain belonged to some rough and mighty giants who dwelt upon it and earned their living there. And in a short time, the huntsman perceived 3 of them striding towards him. He laid himself down and feigned to be in a deep sleep, and presently the 3 giants came striding along, and the first kicked him with his foot and exclaimed, "What earthworm is this living here?" "Tread him to death," said the second giant. But the third said contemptuously, "That is not worthwhile. Let him alone. He cannot remain here, and if he climbs higher up the hill, the clouds will take him and carry him away." Hi, Connie. Thanks as always for lurking. After this conversation, they went away. But the huntsman had noted all they said, and as soon as they were gone, he got up and climbed to the top of the mountain. After he had sat there a little while, a cloud came sweeping by, which caught him up and carried him floating about the air. Then it began to sink down over a large walled-in vegetable garden, where, among cabbages and other herbs, he fell softly to the ground. There the huntsman looked round and said, "If I had only something to eat, for with the distance I have traveled, I am very hungry. But here I cannot see a single apple, berry, or fruit of any kind. Everywhere nothing but cabbages." At length he thought that out of necessity he would eat a salad, which, although it had not a delicate flavor, would yet refresh him. Thereupon he looked out for a good head of cabbage, and ate thereof, but he had scarcely tasted a couple of bites before he felt a wondrous change come over him, and found himself quite transformed. From his body grew 4 legs, a thick head, and 2 long ears, and he perceived with anguish that he was changed into a donkey. Still, however, his appetite was not appeased, and because the cabbage tasted well now to his animal appetite, he ate with greater pleasure. At last he tasted a different kind, and immediately he felt another change come over him, and his human form returned. The huntsman now lay down and slept with weariness, and when he awoke in the morning, he broke off a head of the bad and 1 of the good cabbages, and thought to himself, "These shall help me to my own again, and punish the faithless one." With these words he concealed the cabbages about him, and, clambering over the wall, he set out to search for the castle of his love. He luckily discovered it when he had journeyed only a couple of days, and, quickly browning his face so that his own mother would not have recognized him, he went into the castle and begged a night's lodging. "I am so tired," he said. "I can go no further." The witch asked him who he was and what was his business, and he told her he was one of the king's messengers, and had been sent to seek the most delicate cabbage which grew upon the earth. "I have been successful," said he, "and have the herb with me. but the heat of the sun is so strong, and the tender leaves threaten to wither, and I know not if I can carry it further." As soon as the old woman heard of this precious cabbage, she became very agreeable, and begged the huntsman to allow her to taste the vegetable. "Why not?" he replied. "I have got 2 cabbages with me, and will give you 1. And, opening his sack, he handed her the bad herb. The witch, suspecting nothing wrong, took the cabbage into the kitchen to cook it, for her mouth watered for the unknown delicacy. As soon as it was ready, she could not wait till it was put on the table, but snatched a part of it and put it into her mouth. Scarcely had she swallowed it when she lost her human form, and ran like a donkey into the stable yard. Presently the servant went into the kitchen and saw the cabbage ready dressed, which she took up into the Presently the servant went into the kitchen and saw the cabbage ready dressed, which she took up to carry indoors. But, according to old custom, she tasted it on the way to the parlor. Immediately the charm began to work, and she became a donkey, and ran away to the other, while the dish fell on the ground, and its contents were spilled. The messenger, meanwhile, sat with the maiden, and when the cabbage did not come, she took a fancy to have some also, and wondered where it was. The huntsman thought, "The cabbage has begun to work," and said to the maiden, "I will go into the kitchen and see what has happened." As soon as he went down, he saw the 2 donkeys running about the court, and the cabbage lying on the floor. "All right," cried he, "2 have received their share." And, picking up the rest of the cabbage, he laid it on a dish, and took it to the maiden. "I have brought you this delicate dish myself," said he, "that you may not have to wait longer." Thereupon she ate some of it, and soon, like the rest, lost her human form, and ran as a donkey round the court. Afterwards, when the huntsman had washed his face so that the changed ones might recognize him, he went down to the court and said to the 3, "Now you shall be rewarded for your inconstancy." He bound them all 3 together with a rope, and drove them away to a mill. There he knocked at the window, and the miller, putting his head out, asked him what his wishes were. "I have 3 unruly animals here," he said, "whom I cannot keep any longer. Will you take them of me, and give them food and work, and treat them as I will tell you, because, if so, you shall have what you wish for so doing?" "Why not?" replied the miller. "But how shall I treat them?" The huntsman told him that the old donkey, which was the witch, must be given daily 3 beatings and 1 meal only, that the youngest, which was the servant, should receive 1 beating and 3 meals, but the other, which was the maiden, no blows, but 3 meals, for he could not make up his mind to cause her pain. Thereupon the huntsman returned to the castle, in which he found all that he wanted. After 3 days came the miller, and told him he wished to mention that the donkey, for whom he had ordered only 1 meal and 3 beatings, was dead. "The 2 others," he said further, "are certainly not dead, for they eat their 3 meals a day, but they are so weak and ill they cannot last very long." At this relation the huntsman pitied the poor beasts, and told the miller to drive them up again. As soon as they came, he gave them a piece of the good cabbage to eat, and in a few minutes their human form returned. Then the beautiful maiden fell on her knees before him and said, "Oh, my dear huntsman, pardon me for the wrong I did you, for it was not of my own free will, but because my mother compelled me that I acted so. Then and now I love you with my whole heart. Your wishing cloak hangs in yon closet, and the heart of the bird I will bring to you again." When she had thus spoken, the huntsman pardoned her freely, and begged her to keep the heart, for he meant to make her his bride. Soon afterwards, the marriage was performed, and they lived happily together to the end of their days. Thus ends The Donkey Cabbages. Hey, Queen Snowfox, how you doing? Yep, Fridays are story time. I'm hoping to finish the rest of these tales, which it looks like I probably have like 100 pages left. That can't be right. 385 to 501, that can't be 100 pages. It looks so small. Hoping to finish this before October, so that way I can read Frankenstein on Fridays. Get a little bit more in line with the spooky season. This next story is entitled Little One Eye, Little Two Eyes, and Little Three Eyes. So let me change the story title real quick. And this mouse stops moving. Why? Why are you doing that, mouse? All right, and just one quick little thing. I gotta go to the bathroom. So I will be right back. Please don't go anywhere. I will try to be as quick as possible.
Okay, chat, I am back. Sorry about the break. So let us begin the story. Little One Eye, Little Two Eyes, and Little Three Eyes by the brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a woman who had 3 daughters, the eldest of whom was named One Eye, because she had but a single eye, and that placed in the middle of her forehead. The second was called Two Eyes, because she was like other mortals, and the third, Three Eyes, because she had 3 eyes, and one of them in the center of her forehead, like her eldest sister. But because the second sister had nothing out of the common in her appearance, she was looked down upon by her sisters and despised by her mother. "You are no better than common folks," they would say to her. "You do not belong to us." And then they would push her about, give her coarse clothing, and nothing else to eat but their leavings, besides numerous other insults as occasion offered. It happened that Two Eyes had to go into the forest to tend the goat, and she went very hungry because her sisters had given her very little to eat that morning. She sat down upon a hillock and cried so much that her tears flowed almost like rivers out of her eyes. By and by she looked up and saw a woman standing by her, who asked, "Why are you weeping, Two Eyes?" "Because I have 2 eyes like ordinary people," replied the maiden, "and therefore my mother and sisters dislike me, push me into corners, throw me their old clothes, and give me nothing to eat what they leave. Today they have given me so little that I am still hungry." "Dry your eyes now, then," said the wise woman. "I will tell you something which shall prevent you from being hungry again. You must say to your goat, 'Little kid, milk, table, appear.' And immediately a nicely filled table will stand before you, with delicate food upon it, of which you can eat as much as you please. And when you are satisfied and have done with the table, you must say, 'Little kid, milk, table, depart,' and it will disappear directly." With these words the wise woman went away, and Little Two Eyes thought to herself she would try at once what the woman said were true, for she felt very hungry indeed. "Little kid, milk, table, appear." And said the maiden, and immediately a table covered with a white cloth stood before her, with a knife and fork and silver spoon, and the most delicate dishes were ranged in order upon it, and everything as warm as if they had just been taken away from the fire. Two Eyes said a short grace, and then began to eat, and when she had finished, she pronounced the words which the wise woman had told her. "Little kid, milk, table, depart." And directly the table and all that was on it quickly disappeared. "This is capital housekeeping," said the maiden in high glee, and at evening she went home with her goat, and found an earthen dish which her sisters had left her filled with their pickings. She did not touch it, and the next morning she went off again without taking the meager breakfast which was left out for her. The first and second time she did this, the sisters thought nothing of it, but when she did the same the third morning, their attention was roused, and they said,
All is not right with Two Eyes, for she has left her meals twice, and has touched nothing of what was left for her. She must have found some other way of living." So they determined that One Eye should go with the maiden when she drove the goat to the meadow and pay attention to what passed, and observed whether anyone brought her to eat or to drink. When Two Eyes, therefore, was about to set off, One Eye told her she was going with her to see whether she took proper care of the goat and fed her sufficiently. Two Eyes, however, divined her sister's object and drove the goat where the grass was finest, and then said, "Come, One Eye, let us sit down, and I will sing to you." So One Eye sat down, for she was quite tired with her unusual walk and the heat of the sun. "Are you awake or asleep, One Eye? Are you awake or asleep?" sang Two Eyes, until her sister really went to sleep. As soon as she was quite sound, the maiden had her table out, and ate and drank all she needed. And by the time One Eye awoke again, the table had disappeared, and the maiden said to her sister, "Come, we will go home now, while you have been sleeping. The goat might have run about all over the world." So they went home, and after Two Eyes had left her meal untouched, the mother inquired of One Eye what she had seen, and she was obliged to confess that she had been asleep. The following morning, the mother told Three Eyes that she must go out and watch Two Eyes, and see who brought her food, for it was certain that someone must. So Three Eyes told her sister that she was going to accompany her that morning to see if she took care of the goat and fed her well. But Two Eyes saw through her design and drove the goat again to the best feeding place. Then she asked her sister to sit down and she would sing to her. And Three Eyes did so, for she was very tired with her long walk in the heat of the sun. Then Two Eyes began to sing as before, "Are you awake, Three Eyes?" But instead of continuing as she should have done, "Are you asleep, Three Eyes?" she said by mistake, "Are you asleep, Two Eyes?" and so went on singing, "Are you awake, Three Eyes? Are you asleep, Two Eyes?" By and by, Three Eyes closed two of her eyes and went to sleep with them, but the third eye, which was not spoken to, kept open. Three Eyes, however, cunningly shut it too, and feigned to be asleep, while she was really watching. And soon Two Eyes, thinking all safe, repeated the words, "Little kid, milk, table, up here." And as soon as she was satisfied, she said the old words, "Little kid, milk, table, depart." Three Eyes watched all these proceedings, and presently Two Eyes came and awoke her, saying, "Ah, sister, you are a good watcher, but come, let us go home now." When they reached home, Two Eyes again ate nothing, and her sister told her mother she knew now why the haughty hussy would not eat her victuals. "When she is out in the meadow," said her sister, "she says, 'Little kid, milk, table, appear.' And directly a table comes up laid out with meat and wine and everything of the best, much better than we have. And as soon as she has had enough, she says, 'Little kid, milk, table, depart.' And all goes away directly, as I clearly saw. Certainly she did put to sleep two of my eyes, but the one in the middle of my forehead luckily kept awake." Will you have better things than us? Cried the envious mother. Then you shall lose the chance. And, so saying, she took a carving knife and killed the goat dead. As soon as Two Eyes saw this, she went out very sorrowful to the old spot, and sat down where she had sat before to weep bitterly. All at once the wise woman stood in front of her again, and asked why she was crying. "Must I not cry?" replied she. "When the goat which used to furnish me every day with a dinner, according to your promise, has been killed by my mother, and I am suffering again hunger and thirst." "Two Eyes," said the wise woman, "I will give you a piece of advice. Beg your sisters to give you the entrails of the goat, and bury them in the earth before the house door, and your fortune will be made." So saying, she disappeared, and Two Eyes went home and said to her sisters, "Dear sisters, do give me some part of the slain kid. I desire nothing else. Let me have the entrails." The sisters laughed and readily gave them to her, and she buried them secretly before the threshold of the door, as the wise woman had bidden her. The following morning, they found in front of the house a wonderfully beautiful tree, with leaves of silver and fruits of gold, hanging from the boughs, than which nothing more splendid could be seen in the world. The two elder sisters were quite ignorant how the tree came to where it stood, but Two Eyes perceived that it was produced by the goat's entrails, for it stood on the exact spot where she had buried them. As soon as the mother saw it, she told One Eye to break off some of the fruit. One Eye went up to the tree and pulled a bough toward her to pluck off the fruit, but the bough flew back again directly out of her hands, and so it did every time she took hold of it, till she was forced to give up, for she could not obtain a single golden apple in spite of all her endeavors. Then the mother said to Three Eyes, "Do you climb up, for you can see better with your 3 eyes than your sister with her 1. Three Eyes, however, was not more fortunate than her sister, for the golden apples flew back as soon as she touched them. At last, the mother got so impatient that she climbed the tree herself, but she met with no more success than either of her daughters, and grasped the air only when she thought she had the fruit. Two Eyes now thought she would try, and said to her sisters, "Let me get up. Perhaps I may be successful." "Oh, you are very likely indeed," said they. "With your 2 eyes you will see well, no doubt." So Two Eyes climbed the tree, and directly she touched the boughs, the golden apples fell into her hands, so that she plucked them as fast as she could, and filled her apron before she went down. Her mother took them of her, but returned her no thanks, and the 2 sisters, instead of treating Two Eyes better than they had done, were only the more envious of her, because she alone could gather the fruits. In fact, they treated her worse. One morning, not long after the springing up of the apple tree, the 3 sisters were all standing together beneath it, when in the distance a young knight was seen riding toward them. "Make haste, Two Eyes," exclaimed the 2 elder sisters. "Make haste and creep out of our way, that we may not be ashamed of you." And so saying, they put over her in great haste an empty cask which stood near, and which covered the golden apples as well, which she had just been plucking off. Soon the knight came up to the tree,
And the sisters saw he was a very handsome man, for he stopped to admire the fine silver leaves and golden fruit, and presently asked to whom the tree belonged, for he should like to have a branch off it. One Eye and Three Eyes replied that the tree belonged to them, and they tried to pluck a branch off for the night. They had their trouble for nothing, however, for the boughs and fruits flew back as soon as they touched them. "This is very wonderful," cried the knight, "that this tree should belong to you, and yet you cannot pluck the fruit." The sisters, however, maintained that it was theirs, but while they spoke, Two Eyes rolled a golden apple from underneath the cask, so that it traveled to the feet of the knight, for she was angry because her elder sisters had not spoken the truth. When he saw the apple, he was astonished, and asked where it came from. And One Eye and Three Eyes said they had another sister, but they dared not let her be seen, because she had only 2 eyes, like common folk. The knight, however, would see her, and called, "Two Eyes, come here!" And soon she made her appearance from under the cask. The knight was bewildered at her great beauty, and said, "You, Two Eyes, can surely break off a bough of this tree for me?"
"Yes," she replied, "that I will, for it is my property."
And, climbing up, she easily broke off a branch with silver leaves and golden fruit, which she handed to the knight. "What can I give you in return, Two Eyes?" asked the knight.
"Alas, if you take me with you, I shall be happy, for now I suffer hunger and thirst, and am in trouble and grief from early morning to late evening. Take me and save me."
Thereupon the knight raised Two Eyes upon his saddle, and took her home to his father's castle. There he gave her beautiful clothes, and all she wished for to eat or to drink, and afterwards, because his love for her had become so great, he married her, and a very happy wedding they had. Her 2 sisters, meanwhile, were very jealous when Two Eyes was carried off by the knight, but they consoled themselves by saying,
"The wonderful tree remains still for us, and, even if we cannot get at the fruit, everybody that passes will stop to look at it, and then come to praise it to us. Who knows where our wheat may bloom?"
The morning after this speech, however, the tree disappeared, and with it all their hopes. But when Two Eyes that same day looked out of her chamber window, behold, the tree stood before it, and there remained. For a long time after this occurrence, Two Eyes lived in the enjoyment of the greatest happiness. At one morning, 2 poor women came to the palace and begged an alms. Two Eyes, after looking narrowly at their faces, recognized her 2 sisters, One Eye and Three Eyes, who had come to such great poverty that they were forced to wander about begging for their bread from day to day. Two Eyes, however, bade them welcome, invited them in, and took care of them, till they both repented of the evil which they had done to their sister in the days of their childhood. Thus ends Little One Eye, Little Two Eyes, and Little Three Eyes. I hope you enjoyed that tale. The sisters are apparently evil. Always they are evil and up to no good. I personally have 5 sisters, and they constantly sniped at each other, especially growing up, and absolutely refused to share clothing. But I guess that's a sister thing. This next story is entitled Six Servants. The one with glasses could be little four eyes. True. And they did have glasses in the 1800s. But I guess, they were too poor to afford glasses for a fourth sister. And the mother was tired of genetic deformities, I guess. So let us begin the next tale. The Six Servants by the brothers Grimm. A long time ago lived an old queen who was also an enchantress, and her daughter was the most beautiful creature under the sun. But the old woman was ever thinking how to entice men in order to kill them, and every suitor, therefore, who came was compelled, before he could marry the daughter, to answer a riddle which the queen proposed, and which was always so puzzling that it could not be solved. And the unfortunate lover was thereupon forced to kneel down and have his head struck off. Many and many a poor youth had been thus destroyed, for the maiden was very pretty, and still another king's son was found who made up his mind to brave the danger. He had heard of the great beauty of the princess, and he prayed his father to let him go and win her. "Never," replied the king. "If you go away, you go to die." At this answer, the son felt very ill, and so continued for 7 years nigh unto death's door, for no physician could do him any good. At last, when the old king saw all hope was gone, he said to his son, "Go now and try your fortune, for I know not how else to restore you." As soon as the prince heard the word, he jumped up from his bed, and felt new strength and vigor return to him, while he made ready for his journey. Soon he set off, and as he rode along across came a common, he saw at a distance something lying on the ground, like a bundle of hay. But as he approached nearer, he discovered that it was a man who had stretched himself on the earth, and was as big as a little hill. The fellow waited till the prince came up, and then said to him, rising as he spoke, "If you need any one, take me into your service." "What shall I do with such an uncouth fellow as you?" asked the prince. "That matters not," replied the man. "Were I 1,000 times as clumsy, I can render you a service." "Very well, perhaps I shall need you," said the prince. "Come with me." So Fatty accompanied his new master, and presently they met with another man, who was also lying on the ground, with his ear close to the grass. "What are you doing there?" asked the prince. "I am listening," he replied. "And to what are you listening so attentively?" pursued the prince. "I am listening to what is going on in the world around," said the man, "for nothing escapes my hearing. I can even hear the grass growing." "Tell me then," said the prince, "tell me what is passing at the court of the old queen, who has such a beautiful daughter." "I hear," replied the man, "the whistling of the sword which is about to cut off the head of an unsuccessful wooer." "Follow me, and I can find a use for you," said the prince to the listener. And so the three now journeyed together. Presently they came to a spot where were lying 2 feet and part of 2 legs, but they could not see the continuation of them,
till they had walked a good stretch further, and then they came to the body, and at length to the head. "Holloa!" cried the prince. "What a length you are!" "Oh," replied Longlegs, "not so much of that. Why, if I stretch my limbs out as far as I can, I am 1,000 times as long, and taller than the highest mountain on earth. But if you will take me, I am ready to serve you." The prince accepted his offer, and, as they went along, they came to a man who had his eyes bandaged up. "Have you bloodshot eyes?" inquired the prince, "that you bind your eyes up in that way?" "No," replied the man, "but I dare not take away the bandage, for whatever I look at splits in two, so powerful is my sight. Nevertheless, if I am of use, I will accompany you." Thereupon the prince accepted also the services of this man. And, as they went on, they found another fellow, who, although he was lying on the ground in the scorching heat of the sun, trembled and shivered, so that not a limb in his body stood still. "What makes you freeze when the sun shines like this?" asked the prince. "Alas, my nature is quite different from anything else," replied the man. "The hotter it is, the colder I feel, and the frost penetrates all my bones, while the colder it is, the hotter I feel, so that I cannot touch ice for the heat of my body, nor yet go near the fire for fear I should freeze it." "You are a wonderful fellow," said the prince. "Come with me, and perhaps I may need you." So the man followed with the rest, and they came next to a man who was stretching his neck to such a length that he could see over all the neighboring hills. "What are you looking at so eagerly?" asked the prince. "I have such clear eyes," replied the man, "that I can see over all the forests, fields, valleys, and hills. In fact, quite round the world." "Come with me, then," said the prince, "for I have need of a companion like you." The prince now pursued his way with his 6 servants to the city where the old queen dwelt. When he arrived, he would not tell his name, but told the witch if she would give him her daughter, he would do all she desired. The old enchantress was delighted to have such a handsome young man fall into her clutches, and told him she would set him 3 tasks, and, if he performed them all, the princess should become his wife. "What is the first, then?" asked the prince. "You must fetch me a ring which I have let fall into the Red Sea," said the queen. Then the prince returned home to his servants and said to them, "The first task is no easy one. It is to fetch a ring out of the Red Sea, but let us consult together." "I will see where it lies," said he with the clear eyes, and, looking down into the water, he continued, "There it hangs on a pointed stone." If I could but see it, I would fetch it up," said Longarms. "Is that all?" said Fatty, and, lying down on the bank, he held his mouth open to the water, and the stream ran in as if into a pit, till at length the whole sea was as dry as a meadow. Longarms thereupon bent down a little, and fetched out the ring, to the great joy of the prince, who carried it to the old witch. She was mightily astonished, but confessed it was the right ring. "The first task you have performed happily," she said, "but now comes the second. Do you see those 300 oxen grazing on the meadows before my palace? All those you must consume. Flesh, bones, and skins, and horns. Then in my cellar are 300 casks of wine, which must all be drunk out by you. And if you leave a single hair of any of the oxen, or one drop of the wine, you will lose your life.
May I invite any guests to the banquet? Asked the prince. For no dinner is worth having without. The old woman smiled grimly, but told him he might have one guest for company, but no more. Thereupon the prince returned again to his servants and told them what the task was, and then he invited Fatty to be his guest. He came and quickly consumed the 300 oxen, flesh and bones, skin and horns, while he made as if it were only a good breakfast. Next he drank all the wine out of every cask, without so much as using a glass, but draining them all to the very dregs. As soon as the meal was over, the prince went and told the queen he had performed the second task. She was much astonished, and said no one had ever before got so far as that. But she determined that the prince should not escape her, for she felt confident he would lose his head about the third task.
This evening, said she, I will bring my daughter into your room, and you shall hold her round with one arm. But mind you do not fall asleep while you sit there, for at 12 o'clock I shall come, and if my daughter is not with you, then you are lost.
This task is easy, thought the prince to himself. I shall certainly keep my eyes open. Still he called his servants together and told them what the old lady had said. Who knows, said he, what craftiness may be behind. Foresight is necessary. Do you keep watch that nobody passes out of the chamber during the night. As soon as night came, the old queen brought the princess to the prince, and then Long Arms coiled himself in a circle round the pair, and Fatty placed himself in the doorway so that not a living soul could enter the room. So there the two sat, and the maiden spoke not a word, but the moon shone through the window upon her face, so that the prince could see her great beauty. He did nothing but look at her, was full of happiness and love, and felt no weariness at all. This lasted till 11 o'clock, and then the old witch threw a charm over all, so that they fell fast asleep, and at the same moment the maiden was carried off. Till 11:45 the three slept soundly, but then the charm lost its strength, and they all awoke again. "Oh, what a terrible misfortune!" cried the prince as soon as he awoke. "I am lost!" The faithful servants also began to complain, but the listener said, "Be quiet, and I will hear where she is." He listened a moment, and then said, "The princess is sitting 300 miles from hence, inside a cave, bewailing her fate. You alone can help us, Long Arms. If you set to the task, you will be there in a couple of strides." "Certainly," said Long Arms, "but Sharp Eyes must also go with us to pierce the rock." Then he hoisted Sharp Eyes upon his back, and in a moment, while one could scarcely turn his hand round, they were before the enchanted rock. Immediately Sharp Eyes removed his bandage, and, looking round, the rocky cave was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Then Long Arms took the princess out of the ruins and carried her home first, and immediately returning for his companion, they were all seated, rejoicing at their fortunate escape before the clock struck 12. As soon as it did strike, the old enchantress slipped into the room, smiling horribly, for she thought her daughter was safe enough in the rocky cave, and the prince was hers. But when she perceived her daughter in the arms of the prince, she was terrified and exclaimed, "Here is one who can do more than I can." She dared not, however, deny her promise, and the maiden was therefore betrothed to the prince. But the old woman whispered in her daughter's ear, "Shame upon you that you listened to common folks and dared not choose a husband after your own wishes." With these words, the proud heart of the princess was inflamed, and she thought of revenge, and accordingly, the following day, she caused 300 bundles of logs to be heaped together, and then said to the prince, "The 3 tasks were soon performed, but I still will not marry you until someone shall be found who will sit upon the fire of these logs and endure it." She thought none of his servants would be burnt for their master, and so that, because out of love for her, he would himself sit upon the pile, she would be freed from him. But the servants said that Frosty had done nothing as yet, though they all had, and so they placed him on top of the pile of wood. The fire was immediately kindled and burnt for 3 days, until all the wood was consumed. But when the flames ceased, there stood Frosty in the middle of the ashes, shivering like an aspen leaf, and declaring that he never before experienced such a frost, and must have perished if it had longer continued. After this, no further excuse could be made, and the beautiful princess was obliged to take the unknown stranger as her husband. But just as they were going to church, the old queen declared again that she could not bear the shame, and she sent her guards after the wedding party with orders, at all risks, to bring back her daughter. The listener, however, had kept his ears open, and he discovered the secret designs of the old witch. "What shall we do?" asked he of Fatty, but the latter was equal to the occasion, and, spitting behind him once or twice a drop or two of the sea water which he had formerly drunk, there was formed a great lake in which the queen's guards were caught and drowned. The queen, as soon as she saw this catastrophe, dispatched her mounted guards, but the listener heard the rattlings of their trappings, and unbound the eyes of their fellow servant, whose look, as soon as he directed it upon the approaching enemy, shivered them like glass. The bridal party now passed on undisturbed, and, as soon as the blessing had been pronounced over the new married pair, the 6 servants took their leave, saying to their former master, "Your wishes are fulfilled, and you no longer require us. We will therefore journey on and seek our fortunes elsewhere." Now, about half a mile from the queen's palace was a village before which a swineherd was tending his drove of pigs. And, as the prince and princess passed by it, the former said to his wife, "Do you know who I really am? I am no king's son, but a swineherd, and this man here with his drove is my father. We two must therefore get out and assist him." So saying, he dismounted with her from the carriage, and they went together into the inn, and he ordered the host to carry away secretly during the night the royal clothes belonging to his wife. Accordingly, when morning came, the poor princess had nothing to wear, but the hostess gave her an old gown and a pair of old slippers.
and of these things made a great favor, telling her that she certainly would not have lent them to her had not her husband begged for them. The princess now began really to believe that her husband was a swineherd, and with him she tended the drove, and thought it was a punishment for her pride and ambition. This continued for 8 days, and then she could bear it no longer, for her feet were wounded all over. Just at that time 2 persons came to her and asked if she knew who her husband was. "Yes, he is a swineherd," she replied, "and is just now gone to drive a little trade with a few ribbons and laces." "Come with us now, and we will take you to him," said the 2 strangers to the princess, and they took her into the palace, where her husband stood arrayed in his royal robes in the great hall. She did not, however, recognize him until he fell on her neck and said to her, "I have suffered so much for you that it was only right that you should also suffer for me." And with these words he kissed her lovingly. Soon afterwards their wedding was celebrated with due form, and with so much grandeur that I, who tell this story, would have liked to have been there to see. Thus ends the tale of the 6 servants. I'd hate to be that friend called Fatty. Well, listen, if you can drink an entire sea, I mean, you may have a massive talent. I mean, hell, Thor drank the entire ocean enough that it created tides. Since he couldn't drain the ocean. But I think they leave it at essentially drinking the ocean. Or you can't drink the entire ocean. You can drink a sea or a lake or something like that. Rather, I think I used to be. No, you didn't used to be. Ever since I've known you. I know much more obese people. This next story is entitled The Old Woman in the Wood. Okay, I have to find out what the hell is wrong with this freaking thing. Why the, God, if I have to download, like, some freaking update for it, I'm gonna freak out. I remember, Pippa at one point in time was complaining about it. It's like, oh yeah, I just want to get a mouse. And then you have to, like, download all this software along with it. I'm just like, why? Why do I have to do that? Anyway, let us continue with the story. The Old Woman in the Wood by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, a poor servant girl was traveling with her boxes through a wood, and just as she got to the middle of it, she found herself in the power of a murdering band of robbers. All at once they sprang out of the brushwood and came towards her, but she jumped out of her cart in terror and hid herself behind a tree. As soon as the robbers had disappeared with their booty, she came from her hiding place and saw her great misfortune. She began to cry bitterly and said to herself, "What shall I do now? A poor girl like me. I cannot find my way out of the wood. Nobody lives here, and I must perish with hunger." She looked about for a road, but could not find one. And when evening came, she sat down under a tree, and commending herself to God, determined to remain where she was, whatever might happen. She had not sat there a long while before a little white pigeon came flying towards her, carrying in his beak a small golden key. The bird put the key into the girl's hand and said, "Do you see yon great tree? Within it is a cupboard, which is opened with this key, and there you will find food enough, so that you need not suffer hunger any longer." The girl went to the tree, and, unlocking it, found pure milk in a jug, and white bread fit to break into it. And of these she made a good meal. When she had finished, she said to herself, "At home now, the cocks and hens are gone to roost, and I am so tired I should like to go to bed myself." In a moment the pigeon flew up, bringing another gold key in his bill, and said, "Do you see yon tree? Open it, and you will find a bed within." She opened it, and there stood a little white bed, and, after saying her prayers and asking God's protection during the night, she went to sleep. In the morning, the pigeon came for the third time, bringing her another key, which he told the girl to open a certain tree, and there she would find plenty of clothes. When she did so, she found dresses of all kinds ornamented with gold and precious stones, as beautiful as any princess could desire. And here in this spot the maiden dwelt for a time, while the pigeon every day brought her what she needed, and it was a very quiet and peaceful life. One day, however, the pigeon came and asked the maiden whether she would do an act of love for him. "With all my heart," was her reply. "I wish you, then," said the pigeon, "to come with me to a little cottage, and to go into it, and there on the hearth you will see an old woman who will say, 'Good day,' but for my sake give her no answer. Let her do what she will, but go past her right hand, and you will see a door which you must open, and pass into a room, where upon a table will lie a number of rings of all descriptions, and among them several with glittering stones. But leave them alone, and look out a plain one which will be there, and bring it to me as quickly as possible." The maiden thereupon went to the cottage and stepped in, and there sat an old woman, who made a great face when she saw her, but said, "Good day, my child." The maiden made no answer, but went towards the door. "Whither are you going?" cried the old woman. "That is my house, and nobody shall enter it unless I do wish." And she tried to detain the maiden by catching hold of her dress, but she silently loosened herself and went into the room, and saw the heap of rings upon the table, which glittered and shone before her eyes. She threw them aside and searched for the plain ring, but could not find it. And while she searched, she saw the old woman slip in and take up a bird cage, which she made off. So the maid pursued her, and took the bird cage away from her. As she looked at it, she saw the ring in the bill of the bird, which was in it. She took the ring and ran home, joyfully expecting the white pigeon would come and fetch the ring. But he did not. So she leaned herself back against her tree,
and waited for the bird. But presently the tree became as if it were weak and yielding, and in its branches began to droop. All at once the boughs bent round and became 2 arms, and as the maiden turned round, the tree became a handsome man, who embraced her and kissed her, saying, "You have saved me out of the power of the old woman, who is an evil witch. She changed me into a tree a long while ago, and every day I became a white pigeon for a couple hours. But so long as she had possession of the ring, I could not regain my human form." Thereupon his servants and horses recovered also from the enchantment, for they likewise had been changed into trees, and once more they accompanied their master to his kingdom, for he was a king's son, and there he married the maiden, and they lived happily ever afterwards. Thus ends The Old Woman in the Wood. Yeah, just barge into old ladies' houses, rifle through their stuff, and take a plain ring. Ask her, so what the hell are you doing in my house? Say, hey, where do you think you're going? Say, all right, fine. You can't have this. You can't have this bird cage. So I'll take my bird. A lot of old ladies I know have birds. Well, not a lot. I don't know a lot of old ladies, but I know of old ladies having birds. I think the only one recently I know of personally that owns a bird was a guy. It was a little like parakeet, I believe, is what he owned. But birds are not very sanitary animals, at least from my experience anyway. This next story is entitled The Man of Iron. I am Iron Man. Dun, 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 dun. So let us begin. The Man of Iron by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a king who possessed a great wood which lay behind his castle, and wherein it was his pleasure to hunt. One day it happened that one of his huntsmen, who had gone into this wood in the morning, did not return as usual. The next day, therefore, the king dispatched 2 others to seek him, but they likewise never reappeared. And so the king then ordered all his huntsmen to make themselves ready to scour the whole forest in search of their missing companions. But after they had set out, not one of them ever returned again, nor even a single dog out of the whole pack that accompanied them. After this occurrence, an edict was issued that nobody should venture into the forest. And from that day, a profound stillness and deep solitude crept over the whole forest, and one saw nothing but owls or eagles, which now and then flew out. This lasted a long time, till once came a strange huntsman to the king, and, begging an audience, said he was ready to go into the dangerous forest. The king would not at first give his consent, saying, "I am afraid it will fare no better with you than with the others, and that you will never return." But the huntsman replied, "I will dare the danger, for I know nothing of fear." Thereupon the huntsman entered the forest with his dog, and in a few minutes the hound, espying a wild animal on the road, pursued it, but it had scarcely gone a couple of yards before it fell into a deep pool, out of which a naked arm stretched itself, and catching the dog, drew it down beneath the water. As soon as the huntsman saw this, he went back and fetched 3 men who came with pails to bail out the water. When they came to the bottom, they found a wild man, whose body was brown like rusty iron, and his hair hung over his face down to his knees. They bound him with cords and led him away to the king, who caused an immense iron cage to be fixed in the courtyard, and forbade anyone on pain of death to open the door of the cage, of which the queen had to keep the key in her charge. After this time, anybody could go with safety into the forest. Now the king had a son, 8 years old, who was once playing in the courtyard, and, during his play, his ball accidentally rolled into the iron cage. He ran up to it and demanded his ball of the prisoner. "Not till you open my door," replied the man.
"No, that I cannot," replied the boy. "My father, the king, has forbidden it."
And so saying, he ran away. But the next morning he came again and demanded his golden ball. "Open my door," said the wild man. But the boy refused. The 3rd morning the king went out a-hunting, and presently the boy went again to the cage and said, "Even if I would open the door, I have not got the key to it." "It lies under your mother's pillow," said the wild man, "and you can get it if you like." So the boy, casting all other thoughts to the winds but his wish to have his ball, ran and fetched the key. The door swung heavily, and the boy jammed his finger, but soon it opened, and the wild man, giving him the golden ball, stepped out and hurried off. At this the boy became alarmed, and cried and called after the man. "Wild man, do not go away, or I shall be beaten." The man turned round, and, raising the boy up, set him upon his shoulders, and walked into the forest with hasty strides. As soon afterwards the king returned. He remarked the empty cage, and asked the queen what had happened. She called her boy, but no one answered, and the king sent out people over the fields to search for him, but they returned empty-handed. Hivian, thank you for following. Thank you for the follow. Then he easily guessed what had really happened, and great grief was shown at the royal court. Meanwhile, as soon as the wild man had reached his old haunts, he set the boy down off his shoulders and said to him, "Your father and mother you will never see again, but I will keep you with me, for you delivered me, and therefore I pity you. If you do all that I tell you, you will be well treated, for I have enough treasure and money, in fact, more than anyone else in the world." That evening the Iron Man let the boy sleep on some moss, and the next morning he took him to the pool and said, "See you, this golden water is bright and clear as crystal. Hereby you must sit and watch that nothing falls into it, or it will be dishonored. Every evening I will come and see if you have obeyed my commands." So the boy sat down on the bank of the pool, but by and by, while he watched, such a sudden pain seized one of his fingers that he plunged it into the water to cool it. He quickly drew it out again, but lo, it was quite golden. And in spite of all his pains, he could not rub off the gold again. In the evening came the Iron Man
and after looking at the boy, he asked, "What has happened to my pool?" "Nothing, nothing," replied the boy, holding his finger behind him that he might not be seen. But the man said, "You have dipped your finger into the water. This time, however, I will overlook it. Only take care it does not happen again." The next day, the boy resumed his post at first daybreak. But in the course of a little while, his finger ached again, and this time he put it to his head and unluckily pulled off a hair which fell into the water. He took it out again very quickly, but it had changed into gold, and by the Iron Man returned, already conscious of what had occurred. "You have let a hair fall into the pool," he said to the boy. "But once more I will overlook your fault. Only if it happens again, the pool will be dishonored, and you can remain with me no longer." The boy took his usual seat again on the third morning, and did not once move his finger, in spite of the pain. The time, however, passed so slowly that he fell to looking at his face reflected in the mirror of the waters, and, while he bent down to do so, his long hair fell down from his shoulders into the pool. In a great hurry he raised his head again, but already his locks were turned into gold and shone in the sun. You may imagine how frightened the poor boy was. He took his pocket-handkerchief and bound it round his head, so that no one might see his hair. But as soon as the Iron Man returned, he said to him, "Untie your handkerchief," for he knew what had happened. Then the golden hair fell down on the boy's shoulders, and he tried to excuse himself, but in vain. "You have not stood the proof," said the Iron Man, "and must remain here no longer. Go forth into the world, and there you will see how poverty fares. But because your heart is innocent, and I mean well towards you, I will grant you this one favor. When you are in trouble, come to this forest. Call my name, and I will come out and help you. My power is great, and I have gold and silver in abundance." So the young prince had to leave the forest, and travelled over many rough and smooth roads, till he came at length to a large town, where he sought work, but without success, for he had learnt nothing which was of use. And at last he went to the king's palace itself, and inquired if they could take him in. The court servants were unaware of any vacancy which he could fill, but because he seemed well favoured, they allowed him to remain. Soon afterwards the cook took him into his service, and told him he might fetch wood and water for the fire, and sweep up the ashes. One day, however, as no one else was at hand, the prince had to carry in a dish for the royal table, but because he would not allow his golden hair to be seen, he entered the room with his cap on his head. "If you come to the royal table," exclaimed the king when he saw him, "you must pull off your cap." "Ah, your majesty," replied the prince, "I dare not, for I have a bad disease on my head." Thereupon the king ordered the cook into his presence, and scolded him because he had taken such a youth into his service, and further commanded him to discharge him. But the cook pitied the poor lad, and changed him with the gardener's boy. Now the prince had to plant and sow, to dig and chop, in spite of all weathers, for he must bear the wind and the rain. One day in summer, as he was working alone in the garden, he took off his cap to cool his head in the breeze, and the sun shone so upon his hair that the golden locks glittered, and their brightness became reflected in the mirror in the chamber of the king's daughter. She jumped up to see what it was, and, perceiving the gardener's boy, called him to bring her a nosegay of flowers. In a great hurry he put on his cap and plucked some wild flowers, which he arranged together. But as he was going up the steps with them to the princess, the gardener met him and said, "How can you take the princess such a nosegay of bad flowers? Go back and fetch the rarest and most beautiful." "Oh, no," said the boy. "The wild flowers bloom the longest and will please the best." So he went up to the chamber, where the princess said to him, "Take off your cap. It is not becoming of you to wear it here." The boy, however, replied he dared not remove it, because his head was too ugly to look at. But she seized his cap and pulled it off, and his golden hair fell down over his shoulders, most beautiful to see. The boy would have run away, but the princess detained him and gave him a handful of ducats. Then he left her and took her money to the gardener, whom he told to give it to his children to play with, for he despised money. The following day, the princess called him again to give her a bouquet of wild flowers, and when he entered with them, she snatched again at his cap, but this time he held it fast with both hands and would not let go. She gave him still another handful of ducats, but he would not keep them, but gave them to the gardener's children for playthings. The third day, it was just the same. The princess could not get his cap, and he would not keep her ducats. Not long after these events, the country was drawn into a war, and the king collected all his people, for he knew not whether he should be able to make a stand against the enemy, who was very powerful and led an immense army. Amongst others, the gardener's boy asked for a horse, saying he was grown up and ready to take part in the fight. The others, however, laughed at him and said, "When we are gone, we will leave behind a horse for you, but take care of yourself." So, as soon as the rest had set out, the young prince went into the stable and found there a horse which was lame and clicked its feet together. Nevertheless, he mounted it and rode away to the gloomy forest, and as soon as he arrived, he called, "Iron Man! Iron Man!" in such a loud voice that the trees re-echoed it. Soon the wild man appeared and asked, "What do you desire?" "I desire a strong horse, for I am going to battle," said the youth. "Then that you shall have, and more than you desire," said the Iron Man, and, driving in among the trees, a page suddenly made his appearance, holding a horse so fiery and mettlesome that he was scarcely to be touched. Behind the steed followed a troop of warriors, all clad in iron, with swords which glittered in the sun. The youth thereupon delivered up his three-legged horse to the page, and, mounting the other, rode off at the head of his troop. Just as he reached the field of battle, he found the greater part of the king's army already slain, and the rest were on the point of yielding. The youth, therefore, charged at once with his iron troop, like a storm of hail against the enemy, and they cut down all who opposed them. The enemy turned and fled, but the young prince pursued and cut to pieces all the fugitives, so that not one man was left. Then, instead of leading his troop before the king, he rode back with them to the forest and summoned the Iron Man. "What do you desire now?" he inquired. "Take back all these soldiers and your steed, and restore me my three-legged horse." All this was done as he desired, and he rode home on his limping animal. When the king arrived afterwards, his daughter greeted him and congratulated him on his victory. "I do not deserve it," he said. "The victory was owing to a strange knight who came to our aid with his troop." His daughter inquired then who he was, but the king told her he did not know, for he had pursued the enemy and had not returned again. The princess afterwards inquired of the gardener respecting the boy, and he laughed and said he had just returned home on his three-legged steed, while the others had laughed at him, saying, "Here comes Hop-a-da-Pop, Hop-a-da-Hop." They asked also behind what hedge he had hid himself, and he replied, "I have done the best I could, and without me you would have fared badly." And for this speech the poor boy was still more mocked. Some time after this, the king said to his daughter, "I will cause a great festival to be held, which shall last 3 days. And you shall throw a golden apple, for which perhaps the unknown knight will contend." Hi, Connie. Thank you for the lurking. Always appreciated. As soon as the proclamation was made, the young prince went to the forest and called for the Iron Man. "What do you desire?" he asked. "That I may catch the golden apple." Lag? There's lag? I'm not noticing any. I don't know. Must be on your end then, because I'm not getting any, red. There were some drop frames earlier, I believe. Let's see now. "It is all the same as if you had it now," said the Iron Man. "But you shall have a red suit of armor for the occasion, and ride there upon a proud fox-colored horse." When the appointed day came, the youth ranged himself along with the other knights, and was not recognized by anyone. Presently the princess stepped forward and threw up the golden apple, which nobody could catch but the Red Knight, who coursed away as soon as he obtained it. The second day, the Iron Man dressed the youth as a white knight, and gave him a grey horse, and again he caught the apple, and he alone. The king was angry when the knight ran away with the prize, and said, "That is not right. He must appear before me and declare his name." Then he ordered, if the knight who had caught the apple did not return the next day, someone should pursue him, and, if he would not return willingly, cut him to pieces. The third day the prince received from the Iron Man a black coat of armor and a black steed, and caught again the apple when it was thrown. When he rode away, the king's people pursued him, and one came so near him that he wounded the Black Knight with the point of his sword. Still he escaped them, but his horse jumped so violently that the helmet fell off the knight's head, and his golden hair was seen. The knights thereupon rode back and told the king. The day following these sports, the princess inquired of the gardener after his boy. "He is working in the garden," he replied. The wonderful fellow has also been to the festival, and yesterday evening returned home and gave my children 3 golden apples, which he won there. When the king knew of this, he caused the youth to be brought before him, and he appeared as usual with his cap on his head. But the princess went up to him and took it off, and then his golden hair fell down over his shoulders, and he appeared so handsome that everyone was astonished. "Are you the knight who appeared each day at the festival, and always in a different color, and won the 3 golden apples?" asked the king. "Yes," he replied, "and these are the apples." And, so saying, he took them out of his pocket and handed them to the king. "If you desire any other proof," he continued, "I will show you the wound which your people gave me as I rode away. But I am also the knight who won the victory for you over your enemy." "If you can do such deeds," said the king, "you are no gardener's boy. Tell me, who is your father?" "My father is a mighty king, and of gold I have not only my desire, but more even than can be imagined," said the young prince. "I own," said the king, "that I am indebted to you. Can I do anything to show it?" "Yes, if you give me your daughter to wife," replied the youth. The princess thereupon laughed and said, "He makes no roundabout tale, but I saw long ago that he was no gardener's boy from his golden hair." And with these words she went and kissed him. By and by the wedding was celebrated, and to it came the prince's father and mother, who had long ago given up their son for dead, and lost all hope of seeing him again. While they sat at the bridal feast, all at once music was heard, and the doors opening, a proud king entered, attended by a long train. He went up to the young prince and embraced him and said, "I am the Iron Man, whom you saved from his wild nature. All the treasures which belong to me are henceforth your property." Thus ends the tale of the Man of Iron. With that, chat, we're going to call it for the evening. So we are going to find somebody to raid into. On the kick side, we don't have enough to host. So let us see whom is available. Okay. Iron. It's the Man of Iron, not Iron Man. Da 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 dun da 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 dun. Well, Izashi is singing apparently and doing a little bit of model work. She has a very nice and calming voice, which I'm assuming you're here for. So we are going to raid into Izashi. Okay, so we're going to give them a quick shout out.
All right. So, as always, I thank y'all for coming out and hearing some stories with me. And I will see you on Monday next time, where we'll be playing some more Expedition 33. So have a wonderful weekend and take care. Bye for now.